Well, welcome to the Waiting List podcast. Sixth episode, fifth
Yeah.
episode ish.
Six.
And today, I believe we'll be discussing or delving into bipolar disorder, maybe amongst other things. But that seems to be of interest. And yeah, so if you have any questions, shoot, and I'll answer to the best.
Well,
of my
first of all,
abilities.
how are you?
Good. I'm good.
Because you seem a bit stressed to me.
Yeah, stressed. It's not a bad level of stress. It's just there's a holiday coming up, and it will be the same. People will relate to that, but there's just stuff you need to tidy up before you go. So the week preceding any holiday is just busy.
Family.
Well, I need to bring the car to the garage. I need to tidy up some stuff for clients. Some letters need to be sent. I need to just make sure all my correspondence is up to date. I need to think about planning in sessions for when I come back. I need to make sure all the clients are aware that I'm away 1st of 18, which I think is the case, but I just want to double check so that there's no surprises there. And then we need to, because we do a house swap, so there's a family from Toulon in France come in to live in our house, and we go and live in their house. So it does mean you need to tidy up somewhat, and so yeah, it's a lot of small things, loose ends, but all in all, it feels things are busy.
Does it not feel creepy, other people being in your house?
No, not
Like
at all.
people staying in your bed that you don't know?
If you go to a hotel, there's been hundreds, if not thousands of people, well, not in the same mattress, hopefully, but, tens, potentially hundreds of people who've slept in that same room. I don't see the issue. And then when it comes to, but what if they damage your house? I've got 3 young kids, what damage could this family do that my own kids haven't done or aren't doing to the house? I really like the concept, and I've only done it once, which was over Easter with a family from Mallorca.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a lovely experience. So yes, there was a pool. Yes, there were uninterrupted views of
Do you think they got to your house and they were like, what?
which played on my mind because it rained, it poured the whole week for them, and in terms of space, it was downsizing by a factor of 10 easily.
Whoa.
Yeah. So, but seemingly the review was good, and they had a good time nonetheless. And you don't come to London for the weather, but it was a bit harsh. Whereas we were, obviously in paradise. And then they had chickens, and they made their own honey. We haven't seen the beehive, but we did.
They were balling out of control.
Oh yeah, the kids easily spend an hour and a half, 2 hours a day feeding the chickens, which are probably fed for years to come. They'd come running with an egg in their hand, like, "Oh, Daddy, I've got an egg. It's warm." I was surprised. I didn't know they would be so into looking after the chickens. And so every morning they made a beeline for the chickens. I mean, it was just stunning. It was great. And at times we've rented out the house before we left anyway. But it just feels a lot warmer when you exchange a house. So that the family in particular, they were accustomed. They'd done hundreds of exchanges. For us, it was the first time. But they were so warm. They'd made food for us for when we arrived.
Oh my
They were
God.
like, "Oh, go into the pantry. By the way, we make our own honey, or try this, try that." They checked in with us to make sure that everything was fine. We did the same, but it was a great experience altogether. So we were sold from that experience. So this is the second time we'll do it. It shaves off a whole budget of the holiday budget, and because we're tied to holiday periods, prices easily are times 6, times 7 at times.
And if it's also other families, they're in the same boat.
Yeah, and there's a level of respect, I suppose. Inevitably you think, well, I'm in your house, so I'm going to look after it as best as I can and make sure that everything is tidy, so everyone has a good time. When you come back, your house is just nice to come back to, and you just know and assume that they would do the same for you. And I don't have much to go by. It was just a one-off, but I'm pretty sure it'll be the same experience as we progress.
Well, that's fun. But that's why you're stressed.
Oh no, no. It's just my wife will be on my case to tidy stuff up. there's some painting to be done. There's some stuff to fix up. So there's some DIY.
You should hire Jamie to do it.
Perhaps.
He needs the money.
He needs the money. Yeah.
Before he goes to Australia.
Yeah. Well, we'll see.
All right. Well, let's get into it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wanted to do this episode on bipolar, not for any specific reason really. I only know of one. I'm sure there's other people who have got it, but I know of one person specifically, a friend's mum who's got it, and I know it's been extremely tough for them, and I think it's a very misunderstood thing, because I think you say bipolar and people are like, oh, you're bipolar in your mood, like it's you're hot and cold. It's, one moment you'll be fine, the next you won't, which isn't the case. And I think for a long time, most people thought if you're bipolar, or if someone says you are bipolar, like even now, I'll be like, you're being bipolar, like or someone's changing hot to cold, or like very quickly. But yeah, so I found out that 1.3 million people in the UK have bipolar disorder. That's not the same as. Wait, is that the same as BPD?
No, it's not. So BPD stands for borderline personality disorder, and this kind of very rapid fluctuating of mood, or let's say emotional response to any trigger, that's more along the
So
lines
that's
of,
more similar to.
That's more a personality. Yeah, that rings, or it sounds like a personality disorder. Yeah.
So.
The difference with bipolar. Oh yeah, but shoot, I don't know. Like
what is bipolar, and what are kind of, from what I understand, there's ranges of cases.
So there's 3 types of bipolar disorder. There's bipolar type 1, bipolar type 2, and then there's cyclothymia, which is a cyclothymia. So it's a more kind of rapid cycling of mood. But all 3, what they have in common are periods of mania, so elated mood, lots of energy, ground thinking, maybe a bit of pressure in your speech, agitation. You probably will sleep less, or need to have less sleep. You're more energized. You also tend to do or engage in activities that you later on come to regret, like the way you spend money is quite an issue when you're on a manic episode. And then you have, after say a couple of weeks of a mania, you then tend to come down and have a depressive episode. The difference between bipolar type 1 and type 2 is that type 1 is more pronounced, so you will have more severe symptoms in terms of mania, and then again there's 4 types of mania, and
so severe types of mania, and then more severe
depressions. So that's it. So it's a more severe mania, but sometimes there's a lack of depressive episodes, or depressive symptoms. So it's mostly pronounced around the mania, whereas type 2 is you have both. You have the mania and you have the depression, but they tend to be less severe in their presentation. So you have a hypomanic period. So you have some mania, but not as pronounced as with type. And then cyclothymia is as you could say the word suggests, but not clear to everyone, is more of a rapid cycling of your moods. Yeah. Where you then have, that
day to day, it can.
Well, less than day to day, but yeah, you have a rapid cycling of moods.
Less than day to day. Oh, so it can be almost.
Well, it could. I guess it could be on a day to day, but it's probably more within a couple of weeks, where your mood is more elated, you're more again energized, and you could say happy, and your thoughts are racing, and then you have.
But I mean, this is kind of my next question. But is it as easy as being happy and sad, or is it?
No, the manias are an issue. Yeah,
okay.
No, the manias are an issue. You can have delirious mania. You can have mania with delusion. You can have just mania, I guess. But if you look at the types of issues that arise during the mania, they can be really quite severe. You know, people get into debt. People blow up relationships.
Yeah, I'd
by the
seen.
things they say and do.
There's a program on Netflix, and it's actually based on a program they did here called Shameless, and the mum has bipolar, and I thought it was a really interesting, because I hadn't really seen it before, and I think I'd thought of it just as, it was just, she was almost ignoring whatever, she was in a mania state, ignoring what anyone said to her.
Yeah, that's true.
It was just like, you need to just like, they were trying to tell her to calm down and stuff, because she was here, there, everywhere. She'd started yoga classes, she was spending money, she wanted to have a baby for some reason, wanted to get married to this man, and it was like complete craziness. And then, you know, that carried on for a few episodes or whatever it is, I'm guessing a few weeks in real time, and then hit this kind of wall where she would not leave, like you couldn't get her out of bed. But that's obviously not the same for everyone. For some people it can be, you know, a bit more slight. That seems really like scary to have someone.
So the thing you mentioned is one of the main issues, is that it's really tricky to get through to people when they're in a mania. They will perceive it as you being
annoying or
just not getting it, or you know, standing in the way of their growth or success or whatever plans they have. So yeah, and you know, it's incredibly difficult.
I think like one of the more known cases would be like Kanye West, because he's, you know, diagnosed bipolar, and I think when he went on that rant, when he got in all that trouble, I won't say the name of what he was just ranting about, but the thing that happened in the 1930s in Germany, and you could almost tell he was never going to take anyone else's, because everyone who was listening to him was kind of going, I don't think you're quite on board. And the guy whose podcast it was is a known kind of, you know, he's kind of crazy and says loads of wild things. But there was nothing that was going to stop him from doing it. He was like, it was almost like he had to get it out the way he was saying it, which must be pretty tough as well, to be in like a mania state while you're, you know, Kanye West, who everyone knows. And then, because there'll be people agreeing with you, because it's not even like you'll have many people around that won't agree with you. You know, all his kind of goons or whoever that hangs around with him will be going, yep, that's a great idea, go for it. And yeah, I agree with you. So he'll just be going off on one. But then you don't see what his lows are like, where it's like, if they're that bad, I don't know.
So I'm not aware that he has or doesn't have a formal diagnosis. I know a little bit of it, but
I'm pretty sure he has, yeah.
Okay. But yeah, so that's if that is the case, that indeed he has a formal diagnosis, then it's probable that obviously whatever rants or whatever things he said that he then maybe or may not later on came to regret, you know, are part of that. And so it's probably the case for most mental health difficulties of a certain severity, but I think bipolar, it doesn't just affect the individual that lives with bipolar, it affects the people around them heavily. Again, probably true for most mental health difficulties, but bipolar is not something that, you know, if you are diagnosed with bipolar, you will live with bipolar for the rest of your life. Yeah, so it's treatable, but it's not curable. There's no cure for bipolar, but there are treatments, and the treatments consist mostly of mood stabilizing medication, mood stabilizers.
So SSRI type of?
No, not so much SSRIs. More lithium. I'm not well versed in all the medication. That's more psychiatrists' responsibility. But yeah, for sure, lithium is a well-known, substance or medication that people with bipolar will be put on.
And is that? I mean, I'm kind of looking at it as if it was a graph. So you kind of got mania and then the depression. Would the lithium and things just even it out.
Yeah.
So the mania isn't as crazy and the depression isn't as low.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah. When it allows, I mean, it's life-saving. Yeah. So it allows people to function, to live, to remain in a stable relationship, to participate in society. But it's not always a given. A, because of stigma. B, because in the mania you may not want to.
You can make some
to
real
take that
mistakes.
medication. Yeah, and you may think, well, that's part of, not just a network of people around me who are telling me, and they are out to get me, or they're just not getting through to you. But the medication as well. You may usually leave it on the wayside or not take it during manic periods. And the manic periods, usually there's also an aspect that feels good about it whilst you're in the manic episodes. It's in hindsight and afterwards that the damage, you realise the damage that it has caused, adding to obviously the sense of guilt that you have in your depression.
Can they fluctuate, those manic?
Yeah, they're not all the same. Yeah.
So it's not like, even if someone who typically has very big manic episodes can 1 week not?
Yeah, no, sure. Yeah, so not all manic episodes are the same. You have one that can last for longer and are just more pronounced, yeah. But the medication should stabilize that. But then having said that, one of the reasons why continuing on the medication is difficult is because it may come with side effects, and the side effects can be to such a degree that it outweighs the benefits. Yeah, it outweighs the benefits. So there's a bit of trial and error, and if you're lucky, the medication will suit you, you tolerate it well, and then for sure, it should be part of your care plan, and it will make a big difference, alongside with therapeutic input, ideally.
But what can a therapist do? Because surely, therapy I've done in the past, I think we spoke about this a few episodes ago, it's kind of down to me to be able to help myself. But it doesn't seem that someone with bipolar could, if they're in... And also, does it always go from manic to depressive, depressive to manic to... Or is there ever a point where they can just be stable?
Yeah, there are periods where they can be stable, again, due or not due to the medication. And it's not the case for the majority of them that if you were to take them off medication, that they would have a real rigid, that you could foresee, we've passed 2 weeks, now there's going to be a 6-week or 4-week
you don't
depressive.
know.
There's clear fluctuations, but again, it's not clockwork. And then again, as you said, depending on context, environment, stress, all sorts of other factors that come into play, substance use, you name it, there will be a more pronounced manic episode, there will be a more pronounced depressive episode. So it differs, and what you can do, well, it's the same that you would, I think it's always helpful to have a good understanding of what someone presents with, because you can plan ahead and say, well, there's an inevitability that you will have periods where obviously you'll be more energized, you'll be more positive in your thoughts, and you want to curb that. You want to make sure that it doesn't turn into a moderate or severe manic episode. And equally, you'll be we know that there'll be times where you may
on a negative scale.
Yeah, and so you can plan ahead, and then what is that? Well, that's the techniques that you would use for most depressions, is having a schedule, keeping track of what you do, making sure that you have structure and purpose as much as you can, making sure that you've got professionals which know of your difficulties, and that you're not just isolated by yourself with no one around you. And then those who live around you inevitably will play a part in helping you to adhere to the structure and kind of prep for that. Yeah.
And I think we kind of went past that question. What can a psychologist do?
that, so you work with what someone presents, depending on, they may come to you and be very depressed, then you focus on that. They may be more or less stable, then you would work more on the future, or preparing for the almost inevitable
manic,
mania that may come, or a more pronounced depression.
I think what I'm kind of if the mania is when you're in that mania and it's going off and you can't stop it yourself, what can a psychologist really do, or what do they usually do in order for them? Because surely someone's not going to take any notice. It kind of, I'm only using myself as an example again, but when you kind of go into an adrenaline state, you forget, most of the things that you're meant to do, and you're meant to fight it, and What is it? Kind of a similar thing?
Yes, and it will really depend on the circumstances. So if someone is severely manic and they put themselves at risk, there are times where that leads to deprivation of liberty, or sectioning, or and someone becoming an impatient for a while until things settle. There will be almost inevitably medication that will need to be reviewed, and they may have not stopped taking their medication, and then there needs to be a medication review. Then you'd work on just grounding the person, making them really present in the moment, just slowing things down. But that kind of depends. I have some clients who currently are present with bipolar, amongst other difficulties, ADHD, and it really depends on where they are and then what you need to do to.
Can they tell when the emotions are about to change?
They could, but again, that's one of the things that you would do is you'll engage with them to start jotting things down, which are the telltale signs, and that should help them to, before they're in that manic episodes, have that openness of mind and acceptance of,
this is happening.
Maybe this is happening, and what did I agree with myself, so that there isn't a repeat of the very difficult previous episode of mania. At that point you can intervene. So when they're in full-blown mania, again, depending on the severity, there's functioning bipolar as well. You may have people that you work with that are bipolar and you wouldn't know. So again, it really depends on what someone brings. Whilst there is the help of the containment or the formalization of this person presents with bipolar disorder.
It's just a range.
Yeah, it's a range. Yeah.
And I mean, I think this is probably the most important question, really. Kind of regarding my friend as well.
Mm-hmm.
What is the best thing that friends and family can kind of do, or is there anything?
For sure.
Because I know that I probably should be kind of careful, but parents aren't together. I don't know how much of that is due to the mum's bipolar, and it seems to me, I don't think people kind of struggle to live with it, and I think she kind of will be on a better stead, and then it can just be, I think, as a child, the kids, when they go and see their mum, it's like me and my dad, or him and dad, or you and your parents. It's too close, and I think sometimes they really struggle with their mum to, because if they are in a manic episode, they're not going to listen, and if they're in a depressive episode, what can you do? And I remember having a conversation with her, and I felt really sorry for her, because it's just, she felt completely helpless. And they were trying these new things out and this and that, but then when she is in the manic episode, it's great. She takes her out for lunch and does this and that and da-da-da. So yeah, is there specifically anything, I mean, I'm guessing there's not, It's kind of, you know.
Long story short, because I could repeat myself about saying, the severity and so on, but you want to make sure that the person doesn't have full access to splurging or spending
Financial,
their finances. So it's damage control, So if you start to notice someone is becoming manic and you're not getting through to them, then you want to get the professionals involved, because the person themselves will not do that. They'll think, I'm feeling great. Why on earth would I?
Yeah.
So you get professional help, and I would say one of the things that inevitably happens is, and that's true for bipolar, it's true for pretty much any mental health difficulty, or even just a physical health issue, is that in families, if you have young children, they'll have a tendency to internalize. That's just the default position. Then they'll have a tendency to want to protect their parents, who seemingly, so say you have a couple of children, so you have siblings, and one of the siblings is struggling, it will draw attention anyway from the parents. And there's a limited amount of that. So what you see is that the other children or the other child starts to bottle, everything up that's happening in their lives and thinks, I need to protect my parents because they have enough plates to spin with my sibling who's unwell. And what you see happen is that everybody tends to do that in the family. So there's a kind of protective reaction that happens, and communication dies down. There's a lot of assumption making about how one should act in order to be of help. And again, with kids, when I say internalizing, there's usually when something fundamentally changes in the family, kids will internalize or take responsibility for whatever's happening. And I would say maybe even more so than focusing on the person that's going through the difficulties, or you could say is unwell, it's very important that those who are kind of normally well look after themselves. So you want to, ideally, if you can, if that's on offer, engage in a systemic piece of work. So systemic is a type of therapy that's used to address dynamics, multiple people, and you can do it individually, but it's easier to conceive using a systemic intervention with multiple people of a family. And so then you start to, you basically open up the conversation.
So you've got to kind of get everyone involved.
You address the elephants in the room. You make sure that there's as little to no unsaid, that people feel validated in their experience. And it's just, it can be really nice to do that work, because more often than not, you'll get to a point where things are said which from an outsider's perspective you may have been aware of, being present in one person, and then you have the other person's perspective, and then finally that gap is bridged and communication flows, and you just notice how it impacts the dynamic almost instantly, and they've got something really tacit to take away. And ideally, at the end of a session, you have some concrete goals and agreements, maybe written down on a piece of paper that the family can take back home and then implement, and you touch base with them 2 weeks later, and you see, well, how's that been? What difference has it made to abide by these rules instead of continuing the stuff that was being done previously? So that's something that often people forget, is you need to look after yourself, because you're the one providing the stability against which the person who's struggling is kind of bouncing and needs to.
And is it something, if, as this is called, the waiting list, with NHS and things like that, if there's someone with a case of, I don't know, social anxiety, can't really go out, and they're trying to find a psychiatrist on the NHS or a psychologist, but then there's someone with extreme bipolar, will they take the person with extreme bipolar first?
Yes, I mean, there are different services more likely, but having said that, again, depending on the resources, but if they're adults, they may be under the care of either CMHG, so community mental health team because they still live home. As long as they're not inpatients, ideally you have people living in their own homes and be independent and supported in the community. But would they prioritize? Well, inevitably you will prioritize based on risk.
Right.
So risk is a big factor in prioritizing people, and you could say there's some unfairness about it, because it does happen that people who have milder symptoms of any given difficulty and have been sitting on a waiting list for 9 months, a year and a half, or even beyond that, are constantly being pushed down the waiting list because people with more urgent needs, are being bumped up the waiting list. But then it does happen that these mild difficulties become more severe, and then that's the whole conundrum.
That's a different conversation.
Yeah, well, I think people managing waiting lists will try to be fair to everyone.
Can you open the window? I'm absolutely boiling hot in here.
Whilst also keeping risk in mind. But yeah, risk it just is what it is. It's a big factor. Yeah.
And sorry, I needed that open. I'm really hot in here.
That's all right.
What's kind of the worst case you've seen? What do you want to do? Aircon? Sorry, everyone. Aircon or that?
Windows open. Let's leave it open.
Yeah,
It's
just leave
fine,
it open. What's the kind of? I mean, I know you probably got to be careful, but
no, yes and no. I mean, yes is the answer, but I'll just be very high level. I don't want to go too much into details, just because it feels a bit sensationalist. Yeah.
I don't know what that means.
It's kind of egging something up about, I'll tell you about the worst things, because maybe it creates more views. I find it, in a sense, disrespectful, perhaps. But people lose everything, and when I mean everything, it's literally everything. So
financially,
savings, marriage, get into gambling. That can overlap, not necessarily so with gambling addictions. Promiscuity. I mean, the stuff you don't come back from. And then you for example, you go into an inpatient setting, or you do a ward round, or depending on which setting you work in within the NHS or even private. And there you are with someone who's post mania, and
so the depression doesn't really seem to be a problem.
No, it is. No, it is probably more. It for sure is both in bipolar type 1 and 2. It happens that that's more of an issue than the mania. Equally, I have clients who were doing quite well. Very kind of successful businessman, entrepreneurs, and then pretty much from one day to another just left everything and fled because.
What do you mean?
Because they just felt overwhelmed, and they didn't have the energy to drive anymore. Maybe they'd taken on too much, and wanted to perform at a level that simply wasn't sustainable. So you could say, regardless of having bipolar, sooner or later, that person would have burnt out because of the levels that they wanted to perform were just unsustainable. But yeah, and then people then slowly the depression sets in, and then pretty much from one day to another, or at least so it seems, do not go back into the office. And obviously it creates a big upheaval. They lose their jobs. The depression can equally be an issue. It's quite a difficult.
Yeah, well, it just seems that the mania seems to cause more.
Yeah, you could say it's more acute. Yeah, the manic episodes, as a general rule of thumb, are shorter lived than the depressive episodes, but they tend to be more acute. But having said that, I have come across clients that where the reverse was true, where the manias were pronounced, yes, to a certain degree, but because the person didn't have as much agency, So meaning they didn't, you know, the finances weren't, you know, under their control fully. So even if they'd squandered everything, it would be limited to a certain loss. You know, again, depending on the responsibility they shouldered, whether they were kind of young adults or even children, or if they were, you know, parents or fathers or mothers. But yeah, you know, it depends, case by case. But yeah, the depression can equally be the thing that keeps people trapped, and as you say, even struggling to get out of bed, brushing their teeth, which then you would be a depressive episode of moderate, if not severe, impairment.
Jesus. And obviously we've spoken, I think, a few times about where, you know, these types of things come from. This seems to me like it would be totally genetic.
There's a genetic predisposition. So you know, there is for sure, we know there is a genetic load, which is quite important, meaning if you have one of both parents who present with bipolar disorder, you have a decent likelihood of inheriting that. But then, as we touched upon in a previous episode, it's not because the genetic makeup is there that automatically you will develop the condition. So that's,
is this your recipe book again?
Yeah, well, I'll stay away from the recipe book, but so you can have the genes, the multiple genes. It's very rarely is it just down to one gene. So it's a multitude of genes, but you may be spared of the genes and the multitude of genes that need to be expressed need to be activated to develop the condition, if the conditions are, you know, protecting you. So it is a matter of, you have a genetic predisposition, so the possibility of you developing the condition is there, but you may be spared the catalyst, so the wrong thing at the wrong time, which makes it so that you go from just carrying the genes but not expressing them, and so not having the condition, to, you know, developing the condition. So and these things, they don't, you know, they tend to develop after, you know, in adulthood. Yeah,
it's not it's something from childhood.
Where you wouldn't diagnose a child with bipolar, you'd wait, you know.
Can it be can it come from any trauma, or
can it come from any trauma?
Like when you say it's come later
so trauma
in life.
Trauma would be a very clear catalyst. You know, it's that condition that needs to be fulfilled in order to, you know, for your genes to become expressed, to become active.
Wow.
And then, yeah. So for, you know, well, I have a client who seemingly was just fine, and then was put on antidepressants around about the age of 18, and very sadly, seemingly so, developed the condition as a result of being put on antidepressants.
Don't scare me.
But equally, that can be the case for, you know, substance use of any sort. It could be the case for any substance. It can be trauma. It could be chronic stress. It could be a multitude of things.
But then the interesting thing is, like, you know, PTSD, which I want to do an episode on, or something like that. That can go over time, as in there's coping mechanisms and all these different things, and eventually you can kind of, this is not the right word, but forget about it.
Yeah, no, you for sure. So
but bipolar, once it's there, it's staying.
Yeah, you will treat it, but you will not cure it.
That's really interesting. That you
same for schizophrenia. So once it's once you start to present you start to what's another word for present? Once you start to
show symptoms.
Yeah, or basically once you're formally diagnosed with it, then it's clear that it's not just an episode of delusion or paranoia or a psychotic episode linked to it could be depression or a substance-induced psychotic episode. When it becomes clear that you actually have developed schizophrenia, same thing. You can treat it, but you can't cure it.
Wow.
Mm.
At least I've learned something today.
All right.
That's insane. Not insane. That's probably not the right word. But it's very interesting how you can. Does it balance out? Only because this is again a stupid question. But say if you like, I've always said with my OCD, if we suddenly went to war, we got drafted. Not being able to touch things and wearing gloves and washing my hands wherever I go, essentially would go out the window.
Probably. Otherwise, you'd make one funny soldier.
Yeah, exactly. With my plastic gloves on and washing my hands, I'd be like, "Can you just wait?" While I anti-wrap my hands.
Yeah, no. Yeah, most probably it would. Yeah.
But with bipolar, would it ever?
No, I think going through active combat again seems to be
It would
a probable
change
catalyst. Yeah.
No, but as in, would it stop?
Would it stop? No, I don't think so. It's a I don't.
It's a complete
think so.
yeah. No, it's a hypothetical.
Well, yeah. Again, lots of stress, sleep deprivation. I would say, if anything, it would worsen things.
Because
you may have the odd case where. Although no, I would lean more.
Stay away
towards
from
it.
war.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, it was more because when you said it's not curable, I was interested to see what stops it. Because, if someone's in a manic episode, grabbing and shaking them doesn't do anything. But I was wondering is it suddenly if there's like an adrenaline spike, would that change something? Like if someone's in a depression, would that change anything? I'm guessing it would. Maybe. Depending what it is. This is just hypothetical.
Yeah, I can look into it, and maybe there's some very good research that's come up on that topic. I would think it just worsens. It just worsens what's whatever's underlining. Yeah, I think it would worsen given the circumstances. I fail to see what the benefit would be, because there's such a evident biological underlying factor, and with biological underlying factors, you want to have a context that suits the needs of the person. So obviously, sleep is very important, diet, structure, purpose, all of that. If that goes out the window, more likely than not, you'll just precipitate any difficulties that are there. But again, there may be outliers. There may be cases where that isn't the case. I'll look into it. I don't know the answer.
Okay. Cool. I mean, those are all the questions I had on bipolar specifically. I know we've got to kind of do a shorter episode today anyway. Is there anything else you wanted to kind of cover today?
No, I think.
I mean, I'd like to if we could find someone to come on who works
has lived experience.
Yeah.
Or maybe we could find someone who has, lived experience of bipolar and feel that they help, and inevitably they would, but help others by.
I'll see if I can get Kanye West on.
You try that.
I'll send him a message now. Actually, maybe not. I feel like he'll probably get us thrown off the internet before anything.
Before we even entered the internet.
Yeah. All right, cool. You happy?
Yeah, sure.
Good. That's what we like. Anything else, Jamie? Question from the floor?
I had mania. I was on tablets once when I had something, and I was going to Tenerife, and me and my girlfriend were arguing pretty much the entire time because these tablets I was on.
Yeah.
And it was like I was having laughing fits.
Yeah.
And I had really angry at small things.
What tablets?
I can't remember what they were, but I couldn't even if I get too hot in bed when we were sleeping or whatever, I get really angry and have a go at her.
But you've
And
got.
they said, like,
He has a formal diagnosis of. You have a formal diagnosis of ADHD, right?
Yeah.
And what tablets were you put on?
He wasn't.
Methylphenidate. Huh?
You weren't
It
ever.
was-
You weren't ever put anything for ADHD.
No, not anything for ADHD, no.
This is something
Which
else.
very
This wasn't
honest
before.
I had.
Yeah. Well, it happens. Yeah, I mean,
And
it's
one
side
of the
effects.
side effects of it would be like mania.
Yeah. No.
Mm.
Well, that's true. Off the top of my head, I don't know which medications would do that, but were they antibiotics?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wait, hold on. You had that recently
I told you.
when
about
you
it.
took
And I didn't-
antibiotics.
and they
No,
asked me to
And you came into. I can't.
When
remember.
I came downstairs, and
Yeah.
I thought it was Christmas.
You were like talking to Mum. You'd been in bed. You were like really hot. I think you had tonsillitis or something.
Yeah, I remember. Like, I came downstairs, and
You were like, "What day is it?"
I bumped. You know when you're really hot and you hit something cold, and it kind of like hurts a load. Like you touch something cold, and it like burns you.
Yeah.
I woke up and then literally just blacked out. Walked downstairs. Was in like this dream state. Walked downstairs, and it was near Christmas. And I walked into the kitchen and just started talking to no one.
Mm.
And I was like, I thought I was talking to Sam and our grandma. And my mum's come up to me and gone, "Jamie, you alright?"
Mm.
Broke me out of this trance I was in. I literally just started like, not crying, but panicking. Ran onto the stairs, like couldn't find my bearings. My coordination completely gone. Like I didn't know where my mum was. Like that was scene 2 of everything.
He does have issues though.
I was like, I basically hallucinating.
Yeah. No. Clearly.
I was so hot.
Clearly,
Like,
yeah.
I mean, this is nothing to do about the exit. It's
Yeah.
just a-
Well.
I was
But
like-
did you have delusions as well? So you had hallucinations, but did you have delusions? So delusions are different. It's more this idea, let's say, that the television sending you subliminal messages aimed at you, or that somehow someone has inserted
Is
a
that like
chip.
paranoia?
It's paranoia as well, but delusion is more very irrational and unfounded beliefs that can't easily be shaken. So, I've got a chip in my head. The CIA's put that in my head, and they're tracking my thoughts. And
No, I
No?
don't know if I have any of that.
no,
I
well,
just-
you could have.
Yeah, I mean,
You
I
could
may
have. Yeah.
have some underlying delusions.
Yeah.
But yeah, usually if I get really hot,
Yeah.
that's why I had nightmares, which I'm sure that's another.
Yeah, you said
Because
that.
because you have visual and auditory hallucinations. Then you have something called what's that again? Hypnagogic and hypnopompic hallucinations, which is that the moment you almost fall asleep, or when you just woken up but you're half asleep still, or you're not fully
That was,
It's
that
like
I reckon
sleep
that's
paralysis.
Probably what that was when I
Yeah.
came downstairs and I started talking to no one.
Yeah.
I was basically at a wall,
yeah.
and obviously, if your son comes downstairs,
Mm.
who you know is ill,
Mm.
is white as a sheet and
Mm.
is sweating,
Mm.
and in their boxers, talking to a wall,
Mm.
something's probably not quite
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
He does.
And were you hearing voices? Like were you,
Well, I was just talking to them.
and Sam was responding?
Yeah, someone was responding.
No.
No, was responding.
And your grandma's alive? She's not passed?
No, she actually is alive. Yeah,
Yeah,
she
no, no,
wasn't.
okay.
Both of them. You were in your room, and my grandma wasn't even there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, well, it's clearly linked to the medication. And so you got off the medication.
No, that wasn't medication.
Oh, that wasn't medication.
Yeah, that was just because I was so ill.
But he does this weird thing if he
Yeah.
has lights in a.
Yeah, I can't.
If
see
he's in a
that.
restaurant, and when they have those kind of dim, the lights are slightly too dim, he has to get out the restaurant. He goes all woozy, and he gets and he has to leave.
Mm.
So I don't know what's up with it. People do call him Crazy Eyes.
Mm.
Yeah. Maybe we should talk about another nightmare episode I could join in, but.
Yeah, maybe we should go into nightmares at some point. And
Yeah, we
I
can.
could definitely join in on that. 'Cause I
Yeah, we
actually
can.
love
There's someone I'd like to invite. He he's more my trainer for EMDR. So trauma. He's a veteran. He then became a counsellor and then focuses now almost entirely on using eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, EMDR, to process trauma, and he inevitably will have lots of veterans that he works with. I wonder if we can get him on. He does workshops on dream completion, and as part of trauma reprocessing. So he'd be interesting to get on.
Yeah, definitely.
I'll pop him a message. Yeah.
All right. Well, look, I'm happy with that. You ready to?
Cool.
Yeah, 50
Yeah.
minutes. Well, thank you for listening to the waiting list. Like and subscribe. Yeah. Anything else from the boss? You've ended it. Anything else from the boss? Nothing.
No. Well, we may have an interesting guest next week.
Yep, we will,
Hopefully, yeah.
and we will see that. That'll be episode number 7.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you for listening, everyone. Peace.